Good evening. We will now call the business session of June 2nd, 2020 to order at 6 p.m. On March 16, 2020, the governor suspended various provisions of the Open Meetings Act pursuant to his state of disaster authority. The change was effective March 16, 2020 until further notice or until the state of disaster declaration expires. In accordance with distancing guidelines and while providing as much transparency as possible, this Waco City Council meeting will not be open to the public. This meeting is being broadcast live at wccc.tv. The audio is also being recorded, and video and audio recordings will be available to the public. According to the Governor and Attorney General, statutes that may require face-to-face interaction between members of the public and public officials are suspended, provided, however, that governmental bodies offer alternative methods of communication with their public officials. This includes public comment on agenda items. In an effort to allow for as much public input as possible, those who wish to submit their written comments on a listed agenda item were asked to do so by 11 a.m. today. The city secretary will read into the record the comments submitted for items on the agenda at the appropriate time. Individuals who registered to speak on a public hearing item will be allowed to speak via conference phone. Esmeralda, did we receive any registrations for public hearings?
Yes, sir, we did.
Okay. So when we get to the public hearing, when the registered speaker is acknowledged, he or she must limit his comments to 3 minutes. For any person addressing the council through the use of a translator, the speaking time will be doubled to accommodate the translation services. Now, please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We will now consider and approve the minutes of May 5th, 2020 and May 19, 2020 council meetings. Esmeralda, I understand there are a couple of corrections.
Yes, sir. For the May 5th minutes on page 3, we had a call in from Teresa Porter, and she'd like us to correct work session 2020-270. It says in her comments where it was about Autism Month, and it actually needs to be changed to Asthma Month. And on page 5, there's a change to the location of the executive session room based on the template and how it generated. It didn't get changed from De Cordova to the 4th floor conference room. So that's one change. For the May 19th minutes, it's the exact same issue on page 4, changing the executive session room from the De Cordova to 3rd floor conference room. And on page 5, related to 2023-37, we're adding just one word. We're changing electronic vehicles. This is Teresa's comment. Electronic vehicles to electric vehicles charging stations. And those are the corrections for your consideration.
Okay. Are there any other corrections or changes? If not, those minutes will stand approved as corrected. And we'll move to public hearing number 2020-355. Is Mr. Peters there?
Yes, sir. Honorable Mayor, members of the council, this is a public hearing to consider a resolution approving the following subdivision plats. A final plat and construction plans for Park Meadows Addition Phase 4 and final plat and construction plans for Park Meadows South Addition Phase 1. By a vote of 12-0, the Plan Commission recommended that the subdivision plats and construction plans be approved.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for staff? I understand that the applicant, David Peter, is on the line. David, are you there?
Do we want to open the public?
Yeah, we need to.
I'm sorry. Yes, I do need to open a public hearing for comments. Thank you. And is David Peter on the line?
Yes, this is David Peter. I'm here. I'm the Vice President of Development for the applicant. My address is 3000 Illinois Avenue in McLean, Texas. I don't have much of a statement. I appreciate the help of staff in getting us to this point, particularly during the COVID shutdown that they've been working around, and look forward to your approval. If there's any questions, I'm here to entertain those.
All right, thank you. Does anybody have any questions from Mr. Peter? All right, Esmeralda, we don't have any other speakers, correct?
That's right.
Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. And that motion carries unanimously. All right, we have couple of resolutions to take care of before we get to the consent agenda. Resolution 2020-386, which is a resolution declaring a vacancy in the Council District 4 position, initiating the employment process for Council District 4, and acknowledging that Dylan Meek shall continue to serve as the council person for District 4 until a successor is duly appointed and qualified. Is there a motion on that item?
Motion for approval. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion passes unanimously. All right. We received a comment card for agenda item resolution 2020-360, which we will remove from the consent agenda and vote on separately. Esmeralda, would you read the comments for that item?
Yes, sir. Alan Northcutt submitted the following comment. I would like to comment on expenditures with the CARES Act, tractor replacement, and zero-turn mower. It may be surprising to learn that the lawn equipment does emit significant amounts of GHGs. For example, 1 hour of use of an average gasoline lawn mower produces emissions equal to driving a gasoline car from Los Angeles to Las Vegas. As a result, the state of California is in the process of phasing out gasoline lawn equipment with a total ban effective in 2031. The advantages of electric lawn equipment include absent GHG emissions, much lower maintenance costs, cheaper operating expenses, and quieter function. This is especially important to park visitors whose relaxation is interrupted by the roar of gas lawnmowers. Attaches a file of the electric zero-turn mower, which might be an effective replacement for the gasoline variety in this agenda item. And that was emailed to you all earlier today. But the larger point is that the city must always now consider electric yard equipment as replacement for the gasoline types, just as it must consider electric vehicles for gasoline vehicles. And with the relatively small price of yard equipment, these substitutions can be begun immediately. And as a reminder, the TCEQ rebate for electric vehicles is still $2,500, with $1,463 rebates remaining and a deadline of January 7th of 2021. There are many opportunities to replace city gas vehicles and EVs now. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a motion on resolution 2020-360?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All right, all in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. The consent agenda tonight, wait a minute, sorry. 371 as well?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay, we need to vote separately on resolution 2020-371, which is to consider a resolution ratifying change order number 1 to the contract with CSA Construction, Inc. for the Waco Metropolitan Area Regional Sewer System, WMARS, Transfer Lift Station and Force Main Project, Package 2, Transfer Lift Station for revising the wet well design and decreasing the contract by $69,017. Is there a motion on that resolution?
Motion for approval.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. The consent agenda tonight consists of resolutions 2020-356 through 2020-372, with the exception of resolutions 2020-360 and 371. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor of that motion, please raise your hand. Councilmember Barefield, are you opposed? Thank you. Sorry, didn't see it. All right, that motion carries unanimously. Thank you. We have 12 ordinances tonight, all of them on second reading, beginning with ordinance 2020-373.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as Lot 2, Block 48, Ross Subdivision, Lot 3A, Block 48, Ross Subdivision, Lot 3B, Block 48, Ross Subdivision, known as 714, 716, and 718 South 11th Street, shall be changed from C3 district classification and become and be designated to O2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
All right, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Motion for second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Get back to where this is. Ordinance 2020-374.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as lots 13 and 14, Block 29, Glenwood Edition, known as 2324 and 2326 Washington Avenue, shall be changed from C2 district classification and become and be designated to O3 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 5-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020, and Councilmember Meek has filed an affidavit of substantial interest.
Okay, is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that motion carries unanimously with Councilmember Meek abstaining. Ordinance 2020-375.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as Lot 11E, Block F, Farm Lot 31, known as 2011 Washington Avenue, shall be changed from C2 district classification and become and be designated to O2 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading. Second.
All right, any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. I should tell you to put your head down and raise your hand. Ordinance 2020-376.
Make it interesting.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as Lot 25C 26A, Block 1, J.I. Moore Edition, known as 1811 Webster Avenue, shall be changed from M3 district classification and become and be designated to C2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-377.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as Lot 24B and 24C, Block 55, Ross subdivision, known as 922 Cleveland Avenue, shall be changed from O2 district classification and become and be designated to C2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-378.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Provide the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as Lot A1, Block 11, Waco Improvement Company Block, known as 1900 North 17th Street, shall be changed from C2 district classification and become and be designated to R2 district classification. Providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and determining the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Do we have a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-379.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, providing the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco be amended by revising Section 28-247 and Chapter 28 zoning of said code. Providing the zoning map shall be changed that certain property described as lots G, B, F, E, and 13, Block A, Farm Lot 10 Edition, known as 300, 316, and 314 South 8th Street, and 701.5 and 621 Jackson Avenue, shall be changed from M2 and C5 district classification and become and be designated to C4 district classification, providing for penalties, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a mo-
Move for approval
Motion.
on second reading.
Hector, did you second?
Sure. Yes, sir.
All right. Very good. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-380.
An ordinance abandoning a 0.1607 acre utility and drainage easement located between Mary Avenue and Jackson Avenue from South 2nd Street to South 3rd Street, described as 0.1607 of 1 acre or 7,000 square feet of land situated in the TJ Chamber Survey, Abstract Number 7, City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, being a portion of that certain Lot 1, Block 1 of Krishna Lone Star LLC Edition, a subdivision as shown on map or plat recorded under plat number 2018-029624 of the plat records in McLennan County, Texas, and authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? In favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-381.
An ordinance abandoning a 0.137 acre alley located between Mary Avenue and Jackson Avenue from South 6th Street to 297 feet of the abandoned South 7th Street, described as being a 0.137 acre tract of land situated in the TJ Chamber Survey, Abstract Number 7, McLennan County, Texas, being all of that called 20-foot wide alley separating lots 1 through 6 and lots 7 through 12 of Block A of the Wynn Addition to the City of Waco, as recorded in Volume T, page 552 of the deed records in McLennan County, Texas, and authorizing the city manager to execute quitclaim deeds, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Motion for approval on second reading.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. That motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-382.
An ordinance amending section 28-624 and chapter 28 zoning of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, to allow automobile servicing establishments as a special use in C2 Community Commercial Zoning District, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinance in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for inclusion in the code, providing for penalties, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. Ordinance 2020-383.
An ordinance of the City of Waco, Texas, changing the street names of Benton Avenue and Garrett Avenue in the City of Waco, McLennan County, Texas, to Caspian Meadow Drive and Pony Run Avenue, respectively, authorizing changing of the city plan to reflect the name, authorizing the changing of City of Waco maps, providing for new street signs, providing a severability clause, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
Is there a motion?
Move for approval
Motion
on
for-
second reading.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, that motion carries unanimously. And finally, on the ordinances, ordinance 2020-384.
An ordinance amending section 11.2 of Article 1 in general and chapter 11 flood prevention and protection of the Code of Ordinances of the City of Waco, Texas, to allow for the use of the most current data available for permitting and construction, repealing all ordinances or parts of ordinances in conflict herewith, providing a severability clause, providing for a penalty, providing for inclusion in the code, and finding and terminating the meeting at which this ordinance is passed is open to the public as required by law. This ordinance was approved by a 6-0 council vote on first reading on May 19th, 2020.
All right, is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor, please raise your hand. And that motion carries unanimously. We have added a special item by addendum, which will be council comments on the death of George Floyd and the protests and events on May 31st. But first, I want to ask, are there any council member reports on committees or boards or commission liaison visits?
Mayor, I don't have a committee report, but I did want to recognize and offer my condolences to the Sustaita family. Manuel Manny Sustaita passed away a couple of days ago. For those that didn't know him, he was definitely a pillar in the South Waco community, a Marine, a veteran, very responsible for the Vietnam Veterans Memorial that's currently on University Parks Drive. Very instrumental in preventing the closure of the VA hospital a few years ago, and just has done an outstanding work. And those in South Waco and the Hispanic community know the name Manny Sustaita. And so I just want to celebrate his memory today, offer my condolences to the family, and just to say thank you to him for all of the work that he did for our community, for South Waco. And I know that his work will be carried on for years to come. So I just wanted to honor him and acknowledge him today.
Thank you, Councilmember Speedo. Anyone else have any report?
No, it goes beyond South Waco. So he was a giant and a strong community leader, just hands down. I know him since I was a little kid.
Thank you. All right, we'll move to the addendum item, which is council comments on the death of George Floyd and the May 31st, 2020 Black Lives Matter protests at Indian Springs Park, the May 31st, 2020 Walk for Healing, and possible future similar protests and or activities. And I'd like to open the floor for any council comments. Councilmember Bearfield, would you like to begin?
I can, or go ahead. You want to start, Jim?
I'll let you finish, Andrea. I've just got a couple comments before. It really specifically towards the George Floyd situation. Anyone who saw that had to be sickened, and watching a man get murdered before your eyes is a terrible thing. I watched the events unfold this weekend with my 9-year-old son Kennedy. It kind of took me back to when I was 9 years old, back in the 60s. Watching the rockets launching, the Apollo versus the SpaceX this weekend, and just the thrill of that, and tempered with the anguish of what I was seeing back in the 60s, the Martin Luther King assassination, civil rights resistance, matched off with what happened this past week. It's a lot of similarities, and I can just remember how I processed those emotions 50 years ago. And with my mom and dad telling me, work for change, be an agent of change. And in the intervening 50 years, there has been change, but there hasn't been enough change. And there's still a lot of backward thinking people out there. And I'll admit that racism still exists. It's awful. So I'm thankful that Waco has great leadership with the city council here, with the commissioners court, pastors, and other community leaders that are helping us through all this. And I know that this council is committed to diversity and equity and inclusion. And I personally, as a Waco City Councilman, I am committed to be an agent of change.
Thank you,
Jim. I would like to begin by offering my deepest condolences to the Floyd family. None of us can pretend which your hurt, your experience, and so I would like to begin by extending my deepest condolences. I also, like Councilmember Holmes, know that while we've come a long way, there's still ways to go. I will say I am so proud of my Waco community that marched peacefully this past weekend. This past Sunday, in spite of what we've seen in other cities and in other communities, Waco and the community of Waco decided to do it differently and do it peacefully and honor and pay the respects, not only of Mr. Floyd, but all of those that have left this earth due to unfortunate circumstances way before their time was up. And so this is just what makes Waco, I think, extra special, that our people that live here, our people that care for our community, our people that even though they know injustice has been done, they still chose to take the higher level and march peacefully. And so from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank each and every person that had participated in those peaceful protests, all of the organizers, the pastors, the community leaders. Thank you so much for loving our community enough. And to my African-American friends, brothers, sisters, I want to tell you that I stand with you in solidarity. We are in this together, and I know it's easy for me to say that because I'm not in your shoes, and nor will I pretend to know what you're going through. But I do tell you that I stand with you, and I'm committed to see at least positive change in our community. And so once again, to everyone who participated in this past weekend's events, thank you for loving your community, your local businesses, your people enough to keep it peaceful. And I want you to know that we do hear you.
Yeah, I'll just echo that and say I'm proud of Waco, and I think what we're seeing here and across the country are people who are hurt, who are angry, and who feel like they don't have a voice. And I just want to say we're listening, and we want to hear, and we want to work together, and that there is so much more that brings us together than tears us apart. And the voices that try to do that, we cannot listen to them, and we must rise above them. And so I again am thankful for the outpouring of love, of togetherness, of the protest and the anger displayed the right way here in Waco, and for these voices to be heard. And I just want to say again that we are listening.
Is it my turn?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think it's moments like this that remind us why the work that we've been doing on equity is important. It highlights the importance of the work that we've been doing. I think that the work that this council and so much of our city staff has done in our retreats and going through the Race Equity Institute's training to try to do our best to bring an end to a centuries-old systemic bias, be it realized or unrealized, has to continue. And I just think that it's time for us to continue to double down on the work that we're doing to try to really understand the gravity of these issues. I think it's a time for repentance in our country right now, and I think that that's something that I would encourage folks to consider and to seek to understand the gravity of this. And I'll be the first to say I have a lot to learn. And I think that is the approach that I want to take. And I think that is the right, I hope others would consider taking that approach too, is seeking to understand the pain and sorrow that so many are experiencing right now, the Floyd family is experiencing right now, and so many in the African-American community are feeling right now. I am thankful for our headlines. Area police chiefs decry the death of George Floyd, followed by the headline, Waco conducts peaceful protests. I think that is a representative, embodies who we are. And I'm thankful for that. And I just want to say that I echo what my co-council members have said, that I will continue to do everything I can to continue to, that Waco's work for equity and understanding will continue, and I will do everything I can to ensure that happens.
Andre, could I go ahead and let you wrap up at the end? Okay. The brutal killing of George Floyd on Memorial Day was tragic, despicable, should be completely unacceptable in our society. Unfortunately, it is a part of a long history of structural inequity in our nation. And Waco has its own sad history of racism, including the lynching in 1919, of Jesse Washington. I believe that we have begun to face this reality in our community, and we must continue to move toward a more racially equitable society. The peaceful protesters and demonstrators who spoke and marched this past Saturday in Waco were right in their calls for action. We must continue to work toward this future together. Across the country, peaceful protesters and demonstrators have been voicing the same desire. Unfortunately, others have taken that opportunity to loot and destroy businesses, police vehicles, and other public and private property. This jeopardizes the important message that must be heard and causes many people who need to hear that message to become fearful and angry. I want to thank the organizers and all the participants of last Saturday's protests for their thoughtful, genuine approach to the problem of racial inequity and violence by some police officers. I also want to thank the leaders in our communities of color for their wise approach in these difficult times. And I want to thank them for the relationships that they have formed and continue to build with our police force. Let's continue to work together towards healing and racial equity. It's going to require difficult conversations about next steps, and those kind of conversations have to occur. Thank you.
I didn't intend to close the show, but I appreciate you, Mayor and Council, for your words. It's funny because I never prepare words. I just don't. But I felt that I had to this time because it's too much. It's too much to just go off book. But I wanted to say I'm immensely proud of the way Waco stood tall for the principles of justice and fairness for all in the wake of this national turmoil. Make no mistake about it, we are battling two viruses in this country, and the one with the longest tenure and furthest reaching symptoms is racism. Systemic biases infiltrate government, education, law enforcement, healthcare, environment, businesses, and take residence in our hearts and minds. And we're better than that. I have family members in blue who are kind and decent and fair. And I know that there are unscrupulous officers as well who don't deserve to wear the badge of respect and honor. All who are right and just must bear the responsibility to hold accountable for those who are not. And we will. The faces of many diverse Wacoans in peaceful protests this weekend gave me hope for our future. Hope for the young Black men that I'm raising. And hope that we, this council in this city, will be an example of the kind of love and leadership that our nation needs. I remain committed to Dr. King's dream that was cut short by an assassin's bullet. I am confident that my peers, my friends, and my fellow Wacoans will join me in deliberate effort to ensure that justice is fairly applied for all. We've marched together, so now let's work together. There are two very specific things we can do right now to make sure our voices are heard. First, we complete our census. Being counted is directly tied to being represented and being served adequately. Secondly, we take our anger and despair to the ballot box. Our right to vote was paid for by the blood of our ancestors, and we owe it to them to use our votes to make the change we want to see in society. I challenge us all to take this same energy into the election season and apply it towards creating systemic change from the top down. We could sit here all day and call the names of those who've been murdered. We could sit here all day and lament and try to figure out why, and there are no answers. So I want you to take this moment, look at yourself in a mirror and acknowledge that you've been awakened. Now it's time for us to go to work.
Thank you, Andrea. There being no further business, we will adjourn this meeting at 6:35 p.m.